Hey guys, so today we're going to do something that was requested in one of my last YouTube videos. We're going to compare the different Nexus professional artist model saxophones. So we're going to start first with the Nexus Select, then I'm going to play the Nexus 1, and then I'm going to play the Nexus Premier, which is our latest release, which we just launched. It's a Nexus artist model horn that is actually launching at below $3K. It's launching at $29.79. So we think that for the quality that you're getting, this new Nexus Premier professional model saxophone is going to be absolutely the best bang for your buck. It's going to be the most affordable professional model saxophone out there on the market today. For the quality, it's just totally unparalleled in today's market. So we're really excited about that. We'll talk about that more in a second, and we'll talk about what differentiates these saxophones and what makes them at a different pricing structure. But again, first we're going to play the horns and we'll talk about it after. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed checking out the different horns there. It's worth mentioning that I was playing on the Nexus Edge Tenor Mouthpiece, the Nexus Elite Reeds, the Nexus Oracle Ligature, and although it probably wasn't changing the sound at all, that was the new Nexus Supreme leather neck strap. All right, so again, first I was playing on the Nexus Select. That's our most premium model. It's exactly the same as the Nexus 1 tenor saxophone, that second horn that you heard. The only difference is the Nexus Select has a double silver plated bell. All right, so let's talk about the specs of both of these horns at the same time, actually. So these are both made with bare brass, nickel-plated brass resonators, ultra suede regulation material, Pisoni Italian leather pads. There's a meticulous balance of natural and synthetic cork throughout the saxophone, premium blued steel springs. There's a light key action on every horn. They are all set up at Boston Sax Shop to feel broken in right out of the case. These horns were designed in the USA by Jack and myself. And these saxophones are all manufactured by some really wonderful saxophonists and artisans of their craft in Taiwan. As I mentioned in the last video, I toured through there last year and was really wonderful working with with this family-owned business. Some of the nicest people I've ever gotten the opportunity to work with, and Jack has spent a lot of time actually going through each of the different factories and facilities there so he could review and work through how they were actually manufacturing each element and part of the saxophone. Now, we're really proud of the fact that we're working with these manufacturers in Taiwan. And as you guys know, a lot of the beginner and intermediate model saxophones are coming out of China. There are actually some really wonderful manufacturers in China, and we actually work with some really great manufacturers in China for the Nexus reed case. And I've always been really impressed with the quality of this case. It's a really nice hardwood material. The felt fabric on the inside is really nice. There's a nice magnetic strip and a beautiful glass surface that the reeds go on. You know, really high quality work. However, across the board, we've been a lot more impressed with the manufacturing coming out of Taiwan for saxophones themselves, and that's one of the reasons why we chose to work with the family-run company that we're working with down there. It's especially reassuring when your manufacturers are actually saxophonists themselves. When it comes to manufacturing such a wonderful instrument, we want to make sure that the people really know what they're doing. But again, the last part of the process is really the most important for us. That's when the horns get to Boston and they are in the care of Jack and the Boston Sax Shop. Again, each horn is individually set up there before it gets to your door. We've got a 7-day return policy. So after it gets to your door, you can make sure you love it before you choose to keep it. So again, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to differentiate between the Nexus Premier models and these Nexus Select and Nexus One models. We're going to talk about how we're able to actually price the Nexus Premier a bit lower than the Nexus Select and Nexus One. And it's worth mentioning there are a few reasons why we're able to price these horns lower than other major brands, just generally speaking, because I'm sure you'll find that the Nexus Select and the Nexus Ones are priced lower than major brands like Selmer and Yamaha with their new horns. And so I mentioned this in the last video, but one, Jack and I are the only owners of Nexus saxophones. So this is a boutique line. And when you buy from Nexus Saxophones, you're supporting us and our small teams. You're not supporting this massive company with a board of investors and shareholders and all sorts of fancy stuff like that. The second reason is that we manage all quality control in-house because we produce just small batches of these horns. We're not producing thousands of saxophones to send them to all different schools all across the world and losing the quality control in the process. We're just producing small batches that we set up at the shop. I actually play test most of these saxophones myself, and we just have a small team managing this whole process before it gets to your door. Which brings us to the third reason: we ship direct to you. We cut out the middleman. This helps save a lot on cost. We're not selling to you through a store or through an online distributor. This helps us keep the price down. And this brings us to the final point here, which is we're also keeping our margins very modest. Our priority here is really getting out super high quality, affordable saxophonists to you, the consumer. During times when I'm off tour, I have dedicated a lot of my life to putting out affordable resources for jazz musicians to learn and better their musical abilities and improvisation skills. And this is during a time when it costs like $50,000, $60,000 to pay tuition and go to a jazz conservatory. So for me, this project is an extension of that same goal. We're getting to a point where new horns are getting pretty inflated, and Jack and I are working super hard to make really high quality horns that are available to you at a much more affordable cost. So right here are really the only differences between the Nexus Select, Nexus One, and the Nexus Premier models. Again, the Nexus Select and Nexus One models are essentially the same. They're finished with bare brass, as opposed to the Nexus Premier, which has a dark cognac lacquer. The bare brass is more complex to manufacture. It requires a different handling process, so as a result, it does raise the cost of production. The Nexus Select, that's the one that's our most premier model. That one also has the double silver plated bell, which raises the cost just a bit more. Another difference between the horns is the Nexus Select and Nexus One are more modified for weight reduction. Although the Nexus Premier is way lighter than other new horns on the market, the Nexus Select and Nexus One are literally the lightest horns available on the market today, to our knowledge. So that also requires some more complex production to be manufacturing these horns that are at such a light weight and keeping the quality so high. The third reason is the Nexus Select and Nexus One include an anodized bell brace. And finally, the Nexus Premier features a high F sharp key, which is actually a more standard option that allows for lower manufacturing cost. Other than these elements, all of these professional artist level horns are very, very similar. The difference between the horn's sound quality is subjective. Sound, tone, these are subjective things, but these differences in how we're producing, building, and manufacturing these horns are actually objective differences, and that is what changes the cost between these three horns just a bit. Anyway, thanks so much for watching today, guys. Again, this video was by request. If you guys have requests for future videos, definitely let me know. Put it in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe and give this video a like if you haven't already, and we'll see you guys next time.